Alright, so let's talk about the dumbest genius strategy in Star Wars. A war fought with literal clones against discount metal mannequins, and somehow, the clones almost lost. You'd think an army of super soldiers who all look like Timora Morrison could steamroll a bunch of walking calculators with guns. But no. They were barely holding it together while the droids kept showing up, like they had Amazon Prime shipping for war crimes. From the outside it looked balanced, but underneath, the Republic was cracking at the seams. The clones weren't just elite, they were rare, fragile, and running out of backup fast. Kamino could only cook up so many troopers before someone had to say, "Hey, what if we just didn't send 5 battalions to the exact same meat grinder again?" Meanwhile, the droids were like, "No worries, mate. We just made 1,000,000 more and slapped some blasters on them during lunch." And don't even get me started on how the Jedi fit into this flaming mess. They were supposed to be peacekeepers, and then one day Mace Windu woke up and was suddenly General Windu. Like, congrats bro, here's your lightsaber and a full-scale intergalactic war. Have fun figuring that out, while your troops get whittled down, and Palpatine smiles like he just rigged the lottery. The clones gave everything. And I mean everything. They weren't just soldiers, they were brothers. Warriors with numbers for names and expiration dates built into their biology. They fought in every climate, every star system, and every hopeless corner of a galaxy being ripped apart by a war they didn't start. All while the people they were dying for debated politics in the Senate, like they had all the time in the world. But the real gut punch is this. They were never supposed to win. The entire war was one long distraction, while Palpatine slowly cooked up his empire in the background, like a Sith slow cooker. The clones weren't pawns, they were shields, holding the line just long enough for the real game to begin. And by the time anyone noticed, it was already checkmate. In this video, we're breaking down how the clones were elite but doomed, why the Republic couldn't outlast the Separatists, even with the Jedi on their side, and how this entire war was a beautifully crafted tragedy hidden beneath blaster fire and clone armor. You're not ready for how deep this goes. The Clone Wars were supposed to be the galaxy's biggest mismatch. On one side, a limited batch of genetically enhanced super soldiers. On the other, a never-ending stream of metal skeletons with the personality of a traffic cone. And yet somehow, this war wasn't a quick and easy Republic victory, it was a 3-year grinder that pushed both sides to the brink. Think about that for a second. The Republic had arguably the most advanced warriors ever made, highly trained, deadly accurate, and loyal to a fault. The Separatists had droids that forgot how to walk in a straight line. So how did these two forces even come close to balance? How did the Republic not steamroll the opposition with their elite commandos and Jedi generals? That's where it gets interesting. Because under the surface of this galactic war machine, there was a ticking clock. The clones might have been better in every measurable way, but they were never designed for scale. Kamino could only grow them so fast, and the Jedi could only lead so many legions before things started falling apart. Meanwhile, the droids weren't just mass-produced, they were mass-replaceable. You lose 1,000 on Geonosis? No problem, make 10,000 more by dinner. Battle droids didn't need sleep, food, or morale. They were walking calculators with guns, and you could spam them like they were on a factory clearance sale. So the real question isn't how the clones kept up hits, how long they could have lasted if the war kept going. Because if this chess match stretched into a war of attrition, well, the Republic's best pieces were destined to run out long before the Separatists ever did. Here's what really grinds my gears. The Republic had all this potential clones that could outthink, outmaneuver, and outfight anything thrown at them. And what did they do with that advantage? They spread them thin across 1,000 battlefronts, handed them vague orders from a Jedi Council in constant moral crisis, and expected them to fight an infinite army with limited reinforcements. What kind of plan is that? You don't send your elite soldiers into meat grinders without a long-term strategy, unless you're trying to lose, or, worse, trying to buy time for something else entirely. These weren't expendable troops. These were brothers who had trained since birth for war, and the Republic treated them like they grew on trees. Meanwhile, the Separatists just kept cranking out new droid models, like they were flavor-of-the-month gadgets. Oh, the B1 South were too dumb. No problem. Here come the B2 South. Still too squishy. Great. Roll out the droideckers. It was like watching someone try to patch a sinking boat by throwing more buckets into the ocean and, somehow, it almost worked. It's hard not to feel for the clones when you really stop and look at what they were up against. These weren't just soldiers, they were people, raised in a lab, trained like machines, but carrying hearts full of loyalty and dreams they'd never lived long enough to realize. And the war didn't care. They were outnumbered at every turn, surrounded by enemies who didn't bleed or feel fear. They watched their brothers fall by the thousands, and the replacements weren't fresh recruits, they were just faster-grown copies, even more disposable than the last batch. The quality dipped because it had to. They didn't have time to make them better, they just needed more bodies. What's worse is that the clones knew they weren't built to last. You hear it in their voices in the Clone Wars. You see it in their eyes. Fives, Rex, Echo, these weren't nameless grunts. They were individuals in a system designed to strip them of identity. And still, they fought like heroes. And for what? A war that was never meant to be won. A plan that treated them as tools to be discarded the moment they served their purpose. It wasn't just a battle between armies, it was a tragedy disguised as strategy. The clones were loyal to the end, and the end came far too soon. They weren't defeated in combat. They were betrayed in silence, by leaders they trusted, by a republic that never saw them as citizens, and by a galaxy that moved on without ever mourning them properly. But for all the sorrow, you can't ignore just how incredible the clones really were. I mean, think about what they achieved. These weren't just soldiers, they were tacticians, pilots, specialists, and leaders, forged from the same template, but molded by experience into something far greater. They adapted to every terrain, every species, every twist the war threw at them. Commander Cody coordinating airstrikes, mid-battle, Rex holding his own against separatist armies with half the numbers. Even low-ranking troopers pulling off missions that'd make most Jedi sweat. And they did it all with style. Jetpacks blazing through the skies of Umbara. Attes stomping across the frozen cliffs of Auto Plutonia. The clones were living proof that quality can stand toe-to-toe with quantity, even when the odds say otherwise. Watching them move in formation was like seeing a symphony of war precise, controlled, devastating. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, the clones proved something the galaxy needed to see. That bravery doesn't require numbers. That loyalty isn't manufactured, it's chosen. Every single day, even when no one else is watching. They stood tall not because they were told to, but because they believed in each other. You see that spark in moments like the Bad Batch forging their own path, in Rex refusing to kill Ahsoka during Order 66. In every clone who chose identity over programming, who broke free of their design and said, "No, I am more than this." That's the legacy that survived long after the war, and it's still alive in the stories that followed. In the Bad Batch, Rebels, even in the tiniest moments where one clone's choice echoes louder than 1,000 droid cannons. That hope, the belief that one person, or one battalion, can change everything, that's what makes Star Wars timeless. Because even if the system failed them, they didn't fail each other, and that's something the droids could never replicate. No programming, no matter how advanced, can simulate true brotherhood. The clones were born into a trap, but some of them found a way out. And in doing so, they reminded us that even in wars engineered to break you, the heart can still choose to stand. The Clone Wars didn't end because the Republic won. They ended because Palpatine decided it was time. And in that single move, everything the clones fought for was erased. The Jedi fell, the Senate collapsed, and the Grand Army of the Republic became the enforcers of an empire they never chose. It wasn't just a war, it was a setup. A grand illusion designed to burn out the brightest so darkness could take their place. The clones were never supposed to win. They were supposed to distract, to delay, to bleed until the real plan came to life. And yet, in that tragedy, there's something unforgettable. A quiet defiance in every clone who asked questions, who disobeyed, who survived. The galaxy may have turned the page, but the scars of that war never healed, and they never should. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy my videos, please consider looking at my pinned comment and checking out the links for my Amazon storefront. It contains my favorite Legos, my gear in which I make videos, and comics that I read on a daily basis. I update it constantly, so please, take a moment and click on the link. On top of that, check out my second channel, Critical Analysis Hub Plus, and my third channel, Critical Analysis Hub XP. Just one click would go on a long way in supporting my channels and future in YouTube.